You might see a lot more than you wanted, but if you have heart, you have hope, and you have heart in you.
The world, Chuck. Everything you've ever loved, everything you see.
From the earliest whispers surrounding the life of Chuck, the film began capturing curiosity simply because of how unusual and emotionally layered its concept appeared. Every new behind-the-scenes update added a sense of curiosity, as if the project itself was expanding in depth long before audiences ever saw a glimpse of the final product. The creative team reportedly approached the story with an ambition to explore the fragile intersection of memory, identity, imagination, and the quiet details that make a life meaningful. Even in early development conversations, the filmmakers emphasized that the journey would move backward through time, unspooling a life not through dramatic explosions or world-shattering battles, but through the smaller, beautifully human pieces that disappear unnoticed. As early leaks described, the film became a mosaic of emotions, blending surrealism with grounded character drama, and building a narrative centered on how a man's inner world can influence the reality around him in ways he never fully understood. What surprised many observers was how boldly the production leaned into blending intimate storytelling with broad cinematic visuals, suggesting a film that balances raw personal emotion with moments of sweeping, dreamlike spectacle. Once filming began, quiet reports from the set began to drift out, describing a surprisingly joyful atmosphere despite the film's heavy themes. Crew members talked about how many scenes were built around spontaneous emotional reactions, with the actors encouraged to improvise moments of vulnerability or humor that weren't even in the script. The idea was to capture the illusion of real life, unpredictable and imperfect, instead of rigidly performing lines. Some scenes reportedly revolved around silent expressions, where characters simply stood in an empty hallway or looked out a window while the world around them changed subtly, almost unnoticeably, reflecting the film's focus on internal landscapes. These descriptions suggested that the creative team wanted each moment to feel authentic, as if viewers were witnessing memories rather than staged performances. Early footage shown internally to the production team reportedly featured striking contrasts, moving from scenes of a collapsing world engulfed in surreal atmosphere to tender childhood memories filled with warmth and sunlight. Each transition reinforced the idea that the film was stitching together fragments of a life, encouraging viewers to reflect on their own experiences and the moments that shaped them. As production continued, updates hinted at how heavily the filmmakers leaned into visual symbolism throughout the story. Several observers described sets featuring subtle recurring elements, dancing lights, faint chalk drawings, swinging pendulums, and familiar objects reappearing in different scenes, but with new meaning each time. These visual motifs were said to represent memories returning in new forms, almost like emotional echoes traveling through time. One rumor mentioned a recurring blue hallway that appears during key transitions, designed to feel both comforting and unsettling, reflecting a space between life and imagination. Another described an enormous rooftop sequence shot during an unexpected thunderstorm, which the crew decided to use instead of waiting for clear weather because the unpredictable atmosphere added authenticity. Even though the production wasn't large in scale, the team reportedly treated every visual detail with unusual precision, making sure that each object, color, or sound contributed to the larger emotional tapestry. One particularly interesting update described how the film's score evolved throughout the project. Instead of composing the music after the scenes were edited, the composer would reportedly send early emotional sketches during filming, allowing the actors and director to feel the tone while creating the scenes. This method allowed the emotional rhythm of the music to shape the performances even before the soundtrack was finalized. Some scenes were filmed in complete silence, except for the faint hum of a piano track, playing on a hidden speaker, giving the environment a soft, dreamlike energy. One crew member described a moment when a small, improvised melody played during a long take and unexpectedly caused an actor to cry, leading to a performance the team kept in the final cut because of its rawness. These kinds of updates made it clear that the filmmakers were trying to craft something deeply personal, where every element, sound, lighting, pacing, silence was chosen with meaning. Another major update centered around the structure of the story. The filmmakers were reportedly fascinated by the reverse timeline, which moves from the end of Chuck's life back to his childhood. Instead of treating this timeline as a simple structural trick, they used it as a way to make each scene feel like a rediscovery. Moments of confusion at the beginning of the film would gradually gain context as the story moved backward. Early viewers of internal rough cuts reportedly mentioned that the emotional impact didn't come simply from the events themselves, but from the way those events recontextualized everything that came before. A small gesture early in the film might not make sense until an hour later, when the audience suddenly realizes it represents a childhood memory, a moment of love, or a quiet promise made decades earlier. This method of storytelling created a sense of layering, giving the film a meditative quality as each revelation unfolded at its own pace. Production updates also highlighted the unusual approach to blending fantasy elements with grounded human emotion. While the heart of the story focused on Chuck's personal journey, there were reportedly sequences that hinted at a metaphysical layer, using surreal images to represent the connection between thought and reality. Observers described scenes of a crumbling sky, crowds reacting to invisible shifts, and buildings flickering like dying memories. These sequences weren't designed for spectacle, but to symbolize how a world built from emotion and imagination can fracture when the life fueling it begins to fade. Despite these grand visual ideas, every update emphasized that the story remained firmly centered on human experience rather than spectacle. The filmmakers wanted viewers to reflect on life's quiet beauty, childhood wonders, fleeting friendships, small victories, and the comforting routines that define existence. Another wave of behind-the-scenes details revealed how emotionally intense many scenes became for the actors. Several of them reportedly described moments when they had to step away after filming particularly heavy sequences, especially those exploring loss, regret, or the fear of being forgotten. Some scenes were said to have been filmed in a single take because the emotional authenticity couldn't be replicated. One update described a moment when an actor playing an older version of Chuck had to sit quietly on a porch, reflecting on his life, and the silence in the scene became so powerful that the crew let the camera roll for nearly 5 minutes without interruption. This footage was later described as the emotional core of the film, representing the peace that comes from accepting both the joys and the sorrows of life. As the project neared completion, updates about the editing process suggested that the film became even more reflective and poetic than originally intended. The editors reportedly spent weeks adjusting the transitions between timelines, making sure each moment of Chuck's life felt connected even as the story moved backward. Early viewers of internal test cuts mentioned that the pacing felt like drifting through memories, with scenes fading into one another, as if the audience were flipping through the pages of a life instead of watching a traditional narrative. The filmmakers intentionally kept some moments ambiguous, allowing viewers to interpret the meaning themselves instead of being explicitly told what each event symbolizes. This approach reportedly created a deeply emotional experience that encouraged personal reflection long after the film ended. Some of the final updates described how passionately the creative team felt about the project. They didn't aim to produce a blockbuster or a conventional drama. Instead, they wanted to create a film that felt meaningful, intimate, and resonant, Several crew members said that working on the film made them reflect on their own lives and relationships, and that the experience changed the way they viewed small daily moments. One said that filming scenes about childhood memories reminded them to reconnect with their own family, while another mentioned that the themes of rebuilding hope during difficult times resonated during long, exhausting days on set. This personal connection from the team suggested that the film would carry an emotional sincerity that couldn't be manufactured. As the final rounds of post-production continued, the film reportedly underwent detailed work on its lighting, sound design, and emotional tone. The sound team added tiny, almost unnoticeable background details, distant laughter, faint music, whispers of wind that subtly reinforced themes from earlier scenes. Lighting artists reportedly adjusted multiple scenes so that even the brightness of sunlight or the glow of street lamps carried symbolic importance. Through these updates, it became clear that the film was built on the idea that a life is made up of moments both ordinary and extraordinary, and each one deserves to be remembered. All these updates together painted a picture of a film unlike typical dramas or fantasies. The life of Chuck became an introspective experience crafted with deep care, exploring the beauty and fragility of existing even for a brief moment in the world. Every leak, every description, every behind-the-scenes detail suggested that the creative team wanted viewers to walk away reflecting not just on the story, but on their own lives, the people they love, the memories they hold on to, and the fleeting moments that pass without warning. As anticipation continued to rise, many began to believe that the film would stand out as a heartfelt, deeply human story that blends emotion, reflection, imagination, and a quiet sense of hope in the face of life's inevitable fragility.